Fun fact about United States history.
All right, let's see it.
America is a Christian nation. The core principles, values, and beliefs that structured the Declaration of Independence, as well as the first 13 state constitutions and then the United States Constitution, come from biblical scripture.
Fun fact about American history, none of that's true. At least not in a way that serves the interests or the rhetorical goals of this content creator. Because you could say that the United States is a Christian nation in the sense that the majority of the US population identifies as Christian, but that doesn't really mean much, and that's obviously not what this content creator means when they say the United States is a Christian nation. And there are no data that support the notion that the ideals and the ethos and the principles that gave structure to the Declaration of Independence and the state constitutions of the original 13 colonies and the US Constitution come from the Bible. They don't. That's just a claim that people make when they want to try to retrofit other influences to the Bible. Because representative government or classical republicanism does not come from the Bible. The separation of powers does not come from the Bible. The right of the accused to confront their accuser does not come from the Bible. Again, these things are the product of other influences, and then people squint at them so the edges blur, and then imagine that they can make those fuzzy edges overlap with the fuzzy edges of something they find in the Bible. So they might find a passage where somebody confronts an accuser and they'll say, see, the right of the accused to confront their accuser comes from the Bible, even though they're ignoring the fact that we can draw a more direct link to like classical literature that predates that passage in the Bible, where people are actually debating whether or not the accused has a right to confront their accuser. And while this content creator did not cite this particular datum, the overwhelming majority of people I see trying to argue that these things are all influenced by the Bible will point out that the publication that was cited more than any other in the political publications of the founding era was the Bible, and specifically the book of Deuteronomy. And while this is true, it doesn't actually mean the Bible was influential on any of these documents, because the people who cite it haven't actually read the research. They don't know where that comes from. And it comes from this 1984 paper by Donald Lutz, The Relative Influence of European Writers on Late 18th Century American Political Thought. And as the table at the bottom of this page shows, the publication that was cited more than any other was the Bible. However, something that Lutz also points out on this very page is that almost 75% of those references to the Bible come from sermons that were reprinted as pamphlets. So this is not the founders quoting the Bible in some kind of essay in a newspaper. These are reprinted sermons. And if you take away the reprinted sermons, the Bible comes in third, fourth, or fifth place. But it is not quoted nearly as much as Enlightenment authors or Whig authors. But Lutz goes on to look at the citations from 1787 and 1788, the drafting and the ratification of the U.S. Constitution. The Federalists never refer to the Bible in those 2 years. And the only people who do refer to the Bible, in a minority of cases, are the Anti-Federalists, the people who were opposed to what would become the U.S. Constitution. So while people may find passages from the Bible that if you squint at them hard enough might kind of take the shape of something that we see being articulated in the Declaration of Independence or the state constitutions or the U.S. Constitution, what you can't do is show any actual line of influence from the Bible to those ideologies, because those connections are being retrofitted by people looking back on their history from a later time period. Because these documents were far more heavily influenced by Enlightenment rationalism, by classical republicanism, by the political philosophies of folks like Locke and Blackstone and Montesquieu and Rousseau than they were by the Bible, which again is nowhere referred to in any of these documents. And again, there are no data that support the conclusion that the principles, the ethos, the ideals that gave structure to these documents come from the Bible. They don't. And the folks who think otherwise really need to learn how to think critically and Google competently. And the fit for this video has been Bluey.